Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another live stream. This is Ira Wolfe, and I'm excited today to have Karen Hayward, who is the author of Stop Random Acts of Marketing. We're going to be talking about recruitment marketing and how the world's changed in social media and recruitment funnels, things that HR and recruiters typically in the past hadn't worried about too much. So we'll get to Karen in just a minute. A couple announcements. Let's pull this up. Here's her book. Let me just turn off a couple of the banners here because we are live. You don't have to wait for us anymore. So Karen's book is available up on Amazon, and we're running a contest. I just got to find the banner here that will put it up. If everyone who's listening texts to 64600, you do G Nation, that stands for Googleization Nation, but G Nation, you get a chance to win a signed copy of Stop Random Acts of Marketing, and I'll be sending a signed copy of it, and you'll be getting a signed copy of my Recruiting in the Age of Googleization, the second edition, which just came out. Which reminds me, if you want to wait and try to win the free copy, you can do that, or you can just go and order it at join.googleizationnation.com. I'll display these a few times during our session here over the next few minutes, so that will be good. So you can get a free copy of Recruiting in the Age of Googleization edition 2.0. It's just out for a week since last week. You can get your free copy. And if you're not interested in that, or if you haven't done it, you can also join. Let's go one more button here. You can also see scrolling across the bottom, join our community, join.googleizationnation.com. That's join, or actually you don't need to join, just googleizationnation.com. It's free. All I need is a first name and an email address, and you'll get updates for live streams, podcasts, articles, webinars that we're scheduling, a lot of other free resources. So a lot of good things. Hopefully we'll be able to provide the community. So let's get to our guest, Karen. Let me hide your screen there. Let's get you on person. Welcome to the live stream. Oops, hang on just a minute. Sorry about that. We had you muted. So, Karen.
That's okay.
So I'm going to welcome you again. So
Thank you. It's great to be here. My first live stream.
Good. And so far so good. Other than we got the mics and the headsets and everything else going. It's always a little bit challenging, and I've got a whole dashboard of things I'm trying to put across here. Let me just do this. Make sure everybody gets your name and book. So when I'm looking away, I'm actually not checking my email and text. Also, just to let everybody know, it is obviously live. If you've got some questions or comments, we do get some of the comments through the board here, but it doesn't always work quite as well, especially if you're watching on LinkedIn. But I will be checking YouTube and Facebook. We're also live there. You can go to youtube.com/Ira Wolfe and Facebook.com Success Performance Solutions. You can watch us live there and also post your comments. So appreciate the opportunity. So Karen, you've had a kind of an interesting background. You got into, you're now CMO of Chief Outsiders. Is that correct?
Well, I'm a managing partner with the firm and a CMO. We do have a CMO of all the CMOs, Pete Hayes, but I'm one of our big band. Yes.
So tell us a little bit about, I guess, your path to get there, Chief Outsiders, and your role, and then also how you got to, what was your goal when you were writing Stop Random Acts of Marketing?
Well, I had spent 20 years at Xerox Canada prior to immigrating to the States, and so I really learned all of kind of the big company ways and best practices, and then I spent a few years in mid-market and high growth companies and was able to take some of those best practices and right-size them for smaller companies. And then when I joined Chief Outsiders 5 years ago, I saw all of these, small companies, family-owned, PE-owned companies that really were just out there trying this and trying that and doing random acts marketing. And
Right.
it was just such an opportunity to say, there is a better way. And so I decided to really just write out what is that better way than just being super random about all of your marketing spend.
Right. And again, in a similar path a few years ago, I sort of went down the road. I've always loved the marketing part. Sometimes I've said this, and I can't remember if you and I talked about this in when we talked last week.
Mm-hmm.
But my first career, I was a dentist, which everybody always finds shocking. Of like how to that, like just like that. So I guess we didn't talk about it.
No,
And what I loved about it, I said this in my TED talk for anybody who's seen it or heard me speak since. I get that same reaction. And it's like, how did you get from here, from dentistry to here? And I said, I loved everything about dentistry but dentistry. I grew up in a family of retailers and marketers and consultants. And over time, I mean, I really loved working with the people. I loved promoting it. I loved the PR. Again, I was successful in doing that. But the problem with dentistry is you've got to do the work. I mean, if I just told you you need a root canal and a crown, ultimately you don't want me sending you off to my associate or somebody else. You want me to do it. So that was sort of the end of the funnel. And there were certainly ways to change that, but I just didn't enjoy that. I enjoyed everything up to the point, and I loved the technology. I loved everything about doing it. But I started my very first month in practice, which was a long time ago, many decades. I actually had a newsletter out within 6 weeks. Now, at that time, everybody was doing mimeographed newsletters,
right.
Literally from Xerox, probably. And then the copy, or you take it someplace to get a copy, and it was black and white. It was really text. That's all it was. Somebody wrote out a letter, put it on text, copied it. You have all the speckled marks all over it. They really weren't very high quality. I subscribed to a company who had a color newsletter. Now the color was one color, so October was orange, Christmas was green. The summer, I think spring was it might have been orange or yellow or something. I don't know. But basically that was the coordinated colors with the seasons, and then they went to a multicolor. But I've been doing that ever since, and I produce a lot of content, and now I say I'm probably a content creator who just happens to be in the HR space. But that's so relevant today. I mean, because the market's changed.
Yeah.
So as soon as I think it was Jordan might have contacted me from Chief Outsiders. It was like, okay, we got to talk. I looked through the book. I saw you had a little section. It was only a couple paragraphs, but a little section on recruiting salespeople and things that changed. You and I do have to spend some time talk about some different assessments that we use. Because that's really the core part of my business was really doing employee assessments. But is how I got there, how I promoted the business was, I've had a website for 23 years. Most of the growth's organic. So again, we're talking that same language, but my target market is similar to yours, is HR and small businesses, HR, recruiting. So you got to this space. So let's talk about what you've seen as different. I mean, you really grew up in the sales and marketing side of it. You've seen, we always talk about this funnel, getting people in and how we develop leads. And again, it's HR and recruiters. I'd say recruiters more than HR. They get it that this is about lead generation. This is about marketing. This is about building your brand. This is getting people interested. But a lot of things have changed. In the past, it was just let's do a broadcast email or a broadcast emailing, direct mail, get a lot of people, 2% hopefully would return, and then we'd work that funnel. But that's all changed. That's all been disrupted. So, kind of briefly, what's changed? What have you seen change dramatically, and how can this help our listeners?
Well, I think there are two fundamental things that have changed. First of all, the whole digital landscape has had a huge impact on shifting the power of relationships. So when you think about marketing, whether it was to attract new employees or to attract buyers, marketing was really, create some awareness and try to get some consideration. And then the sales organization would take over. through the rest of the sales funnel, driving,
Mm-hmm.
intent and then the proposal and all of that. Today, buyers and potential employees self-educate. And so
Okay.
they look at the entire digital landscape before they decide whether or not they want to interact with either you as an employer or you as, a potential supplier for them of a service or a product. So that is just a fundamental shift that many of these well-established companies that are on the smaller or mid-size have really not attuned their business to. So that would be the first thing. And then the second thing is that we're in a labor shortage. I mean, I speak to CEOs all across the country through Vistage and Tech and other organizations. And when you ask them about what is your number one issue, it is finding the right people. So this is a super pertinent topic as it relates to marketing.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And I recorded. I was actually doing some work yesterday in preparation for this, but also just going through some of my client reports. So we help them on the, trying to keep track of recruitment and what are some of the metrics. That's a big area that you talk about. Certainly, HR has not tracked that. And one of the things that I talk about quite often is. Where do I want to go with this? Is how many people, say we're not getting enough visibility or we're not getting enough people to complete applications or the quality's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easy to blame the market. It's easy to blame, the labor pool, the millennials, even though they're 41 years old now. Still, still get trapped with that, with that sense. So one of the things that I look at is saying, okay, let's talk about visibility. How do you know that not enough people see it? How do you know that you should sponsor an ad? How do you know that you should sponsor on, something on Facebook? Should you sponsor ads on Facebook? Should you try social media? People seem to be all over the board with that. So what are some of the key metrics that before people jump to a conclusion that it's the labor market and not their marketing that's a problem? So what would if I called you and said I'm not getting enough people? What can we do differently? Where would you start?
Well, the first thing I would do is figure out what kind of people we want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to figure out where do those people hang out. And so what you would do to solve that, if you were trying to attract more clients, is you'd go and do win-loss analysis with the last 10 deals you've lost and the last 10 deals that you won. I think it's the same thing for employees. You go back and you say, who are the employees that we really wanted that didn't ultimately choose us, and have an independent third party go interview them and find out where do they hang out? Where do they get their information? Why did they decide not to join us? How were they lured by a competitive opportunity? And then you look at the people that did decide to join in most recently, and you find out why did they choose, and what did they look at, and how did they make their decision, and what influenced them. And I think you got to get the data first, and then once you have the data, then you can build a strategy to go out and talk to them in a highly relevant way.
And the crazy thing, and I've said this over and over again, and a lot of people talk about it. HR collects more data than they can think of. I mean, they're a warehouse of data, but they don't always know that they're even capturing it. So one of the things, as I was talking about before, is when I'm speaking to organizations, I'm speaking to HR and recruiters, and they say, I ask them, how many people view your job page? I mean, how many people saw your career site? How many people saw the job listing? Is that really a problem that you need to have a better rank? Is that you need to be higher? Or do you get enough people, but then there's a fall off? Either your career site, I mean, is sometimes impossible to find. I just talked to somebody the other day, and Jason Averbrook, he was my guest last week, And what he mentioned was, he had a son go look at a site, and he goes, "Oh, I'm not looking for a career. I'm looking for a job, part-time job." But they have even the name, even the title of the
Yeah.
menu button, if they can find it. So just as you said, is understand your target market. So maybe there is a career site and a job site that you have to have. Which one has that? But even beyond that, we talk a lot. I've got lessons involved with this. Is once people do find that and they're interested for applying, what's the application process look like? How difficult, how easy is it? So is the drop off because not enough people know about your job listing? Is it because you have a terrible brand? Is it because it's your website's not easy to navigate it? Or do you get people in the front door, they're ready to buy, and there's no one there to cash you out? We've all been in retail environments like that. We get there, there's nobody around, there's a long line, the people aren't very helpful, and so we just drop our goods and walk out the door.
It's so interesting. Last week, a friend of mine had been on the job market for, upwards of 6 months, and I happen to know one of the companies that he was being considered at, and they really liked him. But he chose another company, and I said, "Well, what made the difference?" He said, "I just didn't feel they treated me with respect, and it was just an awful process." And so if that's my impression, it doesn't really matter how much they're going to pay me. I am not up for that. And he took a job with a competitive company. So to your point, it's just like marketing. You have the funnel, and you have to figure out where are the leaks in the funnel. Mm-hmm. Right? And then apply, using that data, apply the strategy that makes sense. And it could be little things like finding out what objections people have, and then putting blogs about those questions and objections on your website.
Mm-hmm. Right.
People search, and they do a lot digitally, and you can't believe the number of people I talk to, small business, say, "Well, does everyone know their Glassdoor rating?"
Right.
And the reason I raise Glassdoor, and we can talk about what that is, the reason I raise Glassdoor is because if you're going to make, as a buyer, a considered purchase where you're going to spend some money, you are going to look at how that company treats its employees. Mm-hmm. Right? Because you want to go to a company with a reputation. So Glassdoor is a social media site where people can go in who have worked there and rate the company. Right. And if you have a Glassdoor rating that's 1 star, you are not going to attract
say it, bye.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Okay, on to the next one.
Right. So Indeed does the same thing, and Indeed's still the largest job board out there, job search engine, whichever one we want to call it. So it does the same thing. But Google, has entered the space with Google for Jobs. But even with that knowledge graph, and it's amazing. I still, I speak to probably 25 or 30 different SHRM audiences a year, and they're there for only one reason, because I'm talking about this topic. Right. And when I go, I ask people, I always bring it up. I ask people, how many people know what Google My Business is, and no one really knows. And I said, how many people know what the knowledge graph is? And nobody really knows. And I said, how many people ever search for a company, saw the image show up, the directions, some ratings, some pictures? Why you should be, HR and recruiters should be using that. Certainly the company should be using that. But that's another source. I mean, is the first stage, and I've been writing and talking a lot about this. It used to be that when someone was looking for a job, the first thing they did was they went to we're both probably old enough you'd go to a Sunday newspaper, you'd go to the paper, you'd go to the help wanted ads, and then the job boards came out, Monster and Career Builder and some of the other boards, or you'd stop by, you'd just walk by, they'd have a hiring sign, or you'd walk in with a bunch of printed envelopes and resumes, and you drop it off, literally face to face. That was sort of the process. That's all been disrupted. But what has also changed is people, because of the low unemployment, have gotten a lot more selective at the company. So the first thing they look at, the very first thing is not what the job is, but if I see a job at a company, I then go and research the company, because most people that are looking for jobs have jobs with way under 4% unemployment, in some places under 3, and some places even under 2%. People have jobs. So if I'm going to look for another job, I want a better opportunity. I want a better place to work. I want a better boss, better growth opportunity. So what does your career site say about that? So it's interesting. I mean, you bring up Glassdoor, the first thing that someone looks for is, what's the company like to work with? Who's my boss going to be? Is it going to be a better situation? Do I have more opportunity?
And what I love about Glassdoor is they ask people, what do you think of the CEO? Because everything emanates from the top.
Hmm?
So
Culture, what's the
what a
culture
better
like?
way to understand the culture of a company
Mm-hmm.
than to hear how confident the employees are in their CEO.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So what's the company like? What's my boss like? Who are people that work there? How can
Yeah.
I make contact? So they go from a Glassdoor, they see somebody's name, they then go to LinkedIn, they hook up with them, they find out if they connect with them, find out what it's really like. Was that a real impression, a review that they had there, because things
Yeah.
change. It's pretty crazy. I know you talk in your book about all the different social medias as well,
Hmm.
using that. Um, and just last week, I was interviewed. Friday, the article came out. I think I sent you a copy of it. It was really interesting. It was a survey by Clutch. Um, and they looked at they contacted a couple hundred HR professionals. And social media came out to be the least favorite tool for for recruiters, for HR to use for recruitment.
I find that astonishing.
Yeah,
Really.
well, that was my response. So when the
Yeah.
reporter called me, the journalist called me. She was actually more than a reporter, but the journalist called me about an interview for that. She said, "Well, here's what I really want to know," and I said, "Well, I think there's two things, and I want to get your opinion on it, and then because you live in the space, you're a little bit more. I'm familiar with all the social media, and I use LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter every day, but I don't use some of the other elements. So I want to go down that rabbit hole a little bit. But I said to the journalist, I think it's two parts. One is that I don't know that HR and recruiters really understand social media. It's not a job posting site. You just can't go there and say, "Hey, we have a job opening," and it didn't work, or we got the wrong type of people. It really is a community. You need to build a network and connections. So one is I think that it's not working because it's not worked properly. Would you agree with that? I mean, and based on your response, I think that you'll agree. But what
Yeah.
have you seen, even with companies on their general marketing, their company marketing?
First of all, totally agree with you. I think video is completely underleveraged. People today will watch video before they'll go to a job posting or read about your company. And so there are things out there today. First of all, you can do a video with an iPhone, a
Mm-hmm.
smartphone that's pretty high
Right.
quality. And people, that you're trying to attract, they want to hear authentically from the company. It doesn't have to be slick, it has to be real. And so I think there's such an opportunity to leverage video in a number of different ways. And, for people who don't know, YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So people go to search on YouTube for everything. So why not have a YouTube channel where you feature your employees' stories? Where you can, for all the recruiters, you can use little tools that are very inexpensive, like OpenSense, where you can standardize your signature blocks, and everybody in the company could have a signature block that has their job, their title, their company logo, and then, thinking of joining us, click here, and it's got a video link to someone telling a story about the company. And then I guess the other thing I would say is, you know, for all these companies that deliver business services, And business service delivery is so important to the employees you have. Your ability to deliver is fundamentally you're as good as your employees are. So why not have an employee feature on your front page of your website talking about your company, versus just screaming about the product and what it does. So I think there are a number of channels that you can use to look for people. LinkedIn, I think, is a great one, just to be posting get-togethers and hosting events where people can gather and learn about your company. Having said that, all of that is predicated on having the right message that is going to resonate with your target audience. So I think it's those two things, which I'll go back to why getting that voice of customer, getting that, insight from learning why people come to you and why they don't, and really locking and loading on the message that is going to resonate and attract your people.
Right. So again, we're definitely on the same page, and you mentioned so many things. So I always talk about, one is I'm a huge fan of video, doing a lot more. Obviously, we're doing it today, and this will be a video, and we get to leverage this. But there's so many free tools, and I think you talked about it, is somebody in your company, even if you don't have a new smartphone, you don't have the iPhone 11, unless you have a flip phone.
Exactly.
Unless you have a flip phone, you basically have a pretty good camera. And whether you prop it up on a bookshelf or you buy some of these
tiny little
some of these are $10 or less. I mean, if you go up on the web, you probably can find a lot of them for free, people just giving them away. I must have a half a dozen here that came with other devices that I bought. So it's very, very easy. And I suggest, even as you said, of having the interviews with employees or hiring managers or people that have worked there, or even with customers, why they like working, why they like buying or purchasing or using the services, and again, if it's around the people that would be involved. But if you have a job listing, basically, if the hiring manager or the which would be ideal, but the recruiter says, "Hi, my name's Ira, and I work for Success Performance Solutions, and I just want to tell you, we've got a job opening for a marketing director or for a software developer, and just want to tell you real briefly what it is." And in 30 seconds, you've got a video, which at this point, the bar is so low that you've differentiated yourself. Plus, you can post it for free on YouTube, as you said. You can put it on your website. Some of the job boards allow you to post the video. And you going back to our Google My Business, which soon as somebody searches your company name in Google, and since they dominate 92% of all searches, the chances of that happening, even if they started on Indeed, they're going to end up on Google, most likely, especially in U.S. and North America, that you could post that video for free on the Google My Business on the bottom, where they have pictures of food and the menus and things. Why don't post those job reviews? That's free too. So when I hear that, we don't have the budget, zero budget. You don't need the equipment. You don't need you don't need a lot of training to do it. And where you can post it, put it on some of the biggest sites in the world where people are searching is out there, and that gets searched independently of the jobs. So if you do a good job, and there's a little bit more involved with the search engine optimization, but it's really, really pretty simple.
I think that's the real opportunity that you and I started talking about last week for marketing and HR to partner together.
Right.
And for HR to say, here's the problem we're trying to solve. We're trying to get, we did some work for a construction firm, trying to get superintendents at a construction firm today in Silicon Valley is just about near impossible. And so getting the marketing organization to partner with the HR challenge and really help them and build a strategy that involves video and all of the things you talked about, figuring out where do these people hang out? What is the message that's going to resonate with them? How do we differentiate our company amongst all their choices. We always worry about differentiating our products. Well, you have to differentiate your company so that people can understand, why should I choose you, as my next 10 years of work life, or, something like that.
Right. So let's go back to social media too, because it's obviously very misunderstood. Saw your reaction when I said there's only 24% of HR feels that it's appropriate, and I think that's again, I don't think they consider YouTube or video social media. Or image. Again, if we're talking about, somebody brings up Pinterest, Instagram, TikTok, which I want to ask you about, Twitter, they all associate that with social media. But as soon as you say video, they don't necessarily do that. So I think is understanding what social media really is. But going beyond that, what other? I think for professionals, for salespeople, managers, LinkedIn's certainly a beast. There's a tremendous amount of people within that. Facebook, I'm not sure I'd go to look for a physician, an accountant, an attorney, an engineer, a software developer on Facebook, unless you're in a particular niche. But it's really good for for hospitality service positions, healthcare. We work with a lot of healthcare organizations, CNAs, NAs. Again, big population there. What about? What type of, I guess, work, or what type of case studies do you have with Instagram and now TikTok? They're obviously out there. Anything interesting going on?
I think it's very, very early days. You don't see a lot of ads, which sort of says, hey, there probably is a real opportunity, to the extent that you can target. So if you really can get to the demographic and the psychographic you're looking for, I think that's awesome.
So beyond the ads, what about using that to build your brand or to promote? Have you to build that community and get the word out there? Yeah, I think that's a big struggle that people have, is that they say, oh, well, we tried Instagram, we went up there and we put up 2 images and we didn't get any response.
No, building a brand takes time. It takes, it's something that comes with focus, and it has to be one of your channels today. If you look at the amount of millennials that have moved away from Facebook, Facebook now is
baby boomers. It's the baby boomers watching their grandkids, right?
Yeah, specifically in the U.S. I think it's different in other countries, but specifically for the U.S., it really is a baby boomer, demographic. So if you want to be where the millennials and the other up and coming generations are, it's Instagram. And so getting and building a authentic conversation and dialogue with people and engagement, I think is smart. And I think if you sustain it and you commit to it, maybe along with something like LinkedIn, you pick a couple of channels. I don't think everybody needs to be everywhere, because if you're a small business, you don't have the resources to be everywhere. But I think
right. I always try to get people focused on. I say, listen, you can. There's probably not a single position in the company that can't be that you can't build a community around that in a specific social media. So it might be Instagram, and then another position might be TikTok, and another one might be Facebook, might be LinkedIn. But start with where you're having a problem.
Yeah,
start with the most critical, tough to fill job role, and say which media would be our best target. And as you said right from the get-go, where do they live?
Right.
What do they watch? What do they follow? What do they see? And then focus on that. And so often you see this shotgun blast, out there. Or as I was preparing people for this, as you're talking about, random acts. It's let's have this. Let's throw all the spaghetti against the wall and hope something sticks, or other things against the wall and hope it sticks. But it's a family show here, so we'll talk about spaghetti.
And one really good place to get insight is from your current employees.
Mhm.
In the book, I talk about this 3-3-3 process where, every 18 months or so, you go to your employees and you ask them to do an anonymous survey and say, what are 3 strengths of the company, 3 weaknesses of the company, and what are the 3 things you do if you were CEO of the company? Well, you could take that process and tailor that to recruiting. You could say, we want to get our 3 best recruiting ideas. Your employees know.
Right. Well, even identifying people, I mean, you just brought up another great example. Even identifying people within the, with people that you pay, people and employees, people that are good. Who are the influencers?
That's
Are
right.
there influencers out there? So, and in the past, and this went back 10 years when I was actually teaching and talking a lot about social media in its infancy, is that at the time it was, well, we don't want anybody out there talking about our brand. We want our brand not controlled, but we want to manage the message. But you could take that influencer and help them. You can present a message to them, and if they really value the organization and they want to help you get the right people on board. Nobody wants to hire the wrong people because it puts a burden on them. They want friends that they can work with. They want to come to work with the group of people that they work with. They want people that are reliable and show up. They're not going to send you people that are unreliable because the burden will fall back on them. So, but every company has a social media influencer that they're talking, they're chatting, they got huge networks, and leverage them to help get the message out.
Yeah, 100%. And, doing that isn't really that hard. All you have to do is create a little bit of content, talk about the job. It'd be cool to do a video, and then ask your employees to share it on their LinkedIn profiles.
Share the video or get them involved in creating the video.
Well, exactly.
Even with some friends. There's so many free ways to recruit and market a company, whether it's to look for people or whether it's to look for customers.
No, I always say if it's free, it's for me.
Yeah, and again, they're good, and unfortunately, the bar's pretty low. Yeah, it's a little higher with customer, with looking for the external customer, but looking for employees, the bar is really low. Hey, we've been talking for I can't believe how quickly this has gone. I can talk to you all day, especially about about marketing and digital marketing. To kind of wrap things up here, what would be some of the kind of 2 or 3 takeaways? What would you like people to remember or to do first, when they leave, when they stop listening to us?
I really think, stop random acts of recruiting and figure out what's your message, focus on why you're different, and then focus on the channels where these people live and be very deliberate. I think if you get the right message and I have a template that I use for differentiating companies. If anyone wants to email me, khayward@cheapoutsiders.com, I'll be happy to send it out. And really get clear on who you are and what your value proposition is for potential employees. And once you have the right message, then figure out the channels.
Right, and let me see if I can get this. It's gonna cover up our faces here. So, but I just wanted to put this up because there's the name of your book, Stop Random Acts of Marketing. And let me remove the banner here, so it's covering up what I want. Find the right banner. There it is. Okay, so there we got your name, so you can look that up. Also, I know you're active on LinkedIn. Just do a search for you. You came up. I tried it. So you're all over the place, as I am. So back to our faces here, and I know here's your book. I've got your copy. I've actually got it highlighted there. There was the recruiter part there, so I appreciate that. Let me go back and make sure everybody's aware of. You can get a free signed copy of it. There it is. Again, just a reminder to text G Nation to 64600, and the winner will be announced on Friday at noon. So be automatically, whoever signs up will get an email or a text, and then you'll be able to send us your shipping address, and we'll get that out. And I'm going to send a copy of my book as well. So it's recruiting in the, where are we there? There's the camera. So second edition, edition 2.0 is out there. You'll get a signed copy of both our books. And if you can't wait for that, you can go to join.googlizationnation.com, and you can just order it. Give me away the first few hundred books for free to get that out there. And really appreciate it. We've had a couple hundred, don't remember the exact number so far. So looking to get a few more and get some feedback up on there. Thanks. Yeah, and congratulations on yours. I think, you know, you don't have to be a marketer. You don't have to be an HR. You don't have to be. This was really written for like that small business owner.
It was.
And in many cases, the HR assistants, the receptionist, and, you know, wears a whole bunch of hats. And it was just really very, very easy. Very, very easy read. And I'd highly recommend that. And then if you connect with Karen, she'll send you that template for that. Final words. Anything? Any words of wisdom? So
no random acts of marketing. Be deliberate.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Hey, thanks everyone. Stay watched in your LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter feeds for the next live stream. Typically doing these either Mondays or Tuesdays each week. I don't remember. We've got somebody scheduled for next week. I apologize. I don't remember who it is, but you'll see a lot of notices. You can also join us every Wednesday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY.com for Geeks, Geezers, and Googlization is our show. You can go to the podcast for all the past ones, and this will certainly make our archive and our library up there. And again, really appreciate everybody taking a few minutes out of today and listening to How to Stop Random Acts of Marketing. Thanks very much, Karen. It was very, very enjoyable. Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and stay on the line. I'm going to go off live here, but we'll chat a little bit afterwards.